Hi guys, welcome to episode 73 of my Warhammer Conquest review series. This week we'll be reviewing issue 73, as always unsurprisingly. With this episode we're getting two paints, this issue. We've got Nurgle's Rot and, I'm going to try and pronounce this right, Nihilak Oxide, probably. They're both technical paints. I'm actually going to open these up. Got a little thing. I'm just going to show you what they're like, because they're a bit weird. You can almost see it there, but with Nurgle's Rot, it's very thick and it's very gloopy. Just gonna, yeah, it's got a very thick consistency, almost like sludge. And that is on purpose. Don't water down your paints with this one. It's not meant to be watered down. It's meant to give you kind of a slime. I'm not sure where to put that now. Kind of a slime to work with. Basically to give you gloop and to give you slime and to give you a rotten thing. The point of that being you can put it all over your Nurgle models to make it look like they've got pus and slime coming out of them, which is fairly cool. Next, and I'm going to open this one up as well, we've got the, I'm going to make sure they're all, this one's a lot more liquid. We've got Nihilak Oxide, Nihilak, whatever, Oxide, and I'm going to just open that one up as well. This one is, you can see that, very watery. But this one is meant to just go as a thin layer over the top of metallic colours in order to give it a rusted effect for copper and brass, rather an oxidised effect. For those of you unfamiliar with what rust is iron oxide. Which means it goes orange. If you've got copper or brass which has copper in it, it will tend to go more of a verdigris colour, which is this colour, as it oxidises, and that's copper oxide. Some of you may have worked in school. If you're not familiar with what copper oxide looks like, most people, particularly Americans out there, and if there's any Americans watching, it's what's happened to the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is built out of, I think, brass or copper or something with a steel frame, but the outside of it has, is that colour, and that it was built that way with a reason. It was built with the intention of being that sort of beautiful bright green colour, but if they ever were to polish it down to its bare metal, it would probably be a copper or brass. So if you're using non-ferrous, non-iron iron-based metals, such as copper and brass, and you wanted to make them look patina, rusted, that's the colour you use. If you're using steel or iron, you'd use some of the oranger colours, and there is an orange rust, riser rust. And if you're using gold, gold doesn't rust, supposedly. Lead goes a kind of black, and gold doesn't rust, which is one of the things about gold. It doesn't decay very much. It can get dull and it can get dirty, but it doesn't tend, to my knowledge, to oxidise. That's one of the reasons it actually has some value other than just being a pretty rock, is because if you need things which don't oxidise, you can use gold and things like that. Silver tends, again, another one that oxidises black. It's worth looking all these things up if you're painting, just because if you want something to look right, you'd be surprised how often you actually see copper oxide in real life. So if you painted copper with orange rust, it wouldn't look right in your brain. Yeah, so slime and oxidization. So two forms of decay basically there. Although you can use it on both both Imperial guys and Nurgle. But yeah, these things are nifty. They're good. They're done to specific consistencies for specific things. It's worth noting a lot of the technicals did exist before GW did them. There are a lot of ways in which you did stuff like that, adding green slimy coloured paints to very thick wood glue and mixing them up, things like that, putting sand in, or flour even, and weird things like that in paint to try and thicken them up and make them look sludgy. If you've got the blood for the blood god, which is another technical which we've gotten so far in this magazine run. That one was just red paint and gloss varnish mixed up together. You used to get quite thick gloss varnishes. Sometimes with a paint thickener, which is something you can get. The main difference and the advantage to GW's ones is they're $2.75 a pot, and you'll often get, you often only need, just throwing that around, you'll often only need 1 or 2 pots because you use it, you only need to use a very small bit of it. Whereas where you used to make things like the glistening blood droplets and that, you get like a bottle of thickener, which was like £3 or £4. You get some red paint, which was which you needed about the same amount's worth, and you get a pot of gloss, which had a high viscosity, which basically means very thick, which could cost anything. You could make enough of it to last you a lifetime for like 20 quid. But in realistic terms, often you make enough to last you 2 or 3 lifetimes because you're never going to use that much. And you have to buy all the bits, you have to mix it, you have to prep it. Whereas the GW stuff, it comes pre-prepped, pre-made. Unless you're doing thousands of models, which in GW stuff you're probably not, it's actually a more convenient price and a more convenient amount. That's just worth sort of knowing. GW didn't invent a lot of these ideas, and I don't think they're claiming to. They just put their own twist on them and give them their own copyrightable name, so no one just copies and nicks them, which is, again, a sidetrack. That is something that used to happen to GW when they changed paint suppliers. The old paint suppliers wouldn't necessarily stop making GW's paints, and thus if somebody wanted a paint, they basically they keep the copyright, they nick the colour, and GW wouldn't be able to take the colours with them, and therefore they'd lose the they might lose the customer. If somebody painted something in Warlock purple, which is an old metallic, which is an old deep purple, and they had to change paint suppliers to try and keep their overheads down, then they'd lose that purple, and the person would have to go to the paint manufacturer to maybe get it, if they could get it at all, if the paint manufacturer did keep doing it. Whereas the reason you've got such names as Nihilak Oxide and Nurgle's Rot is that when GW changes paint distributors or paint manufacturers, because GW don't make paint in-house, they can take these with them. But I don't think anyone in GW is claiming to have invented these concepts. They were pre-existing concepts that were around. They just packaged them up and made them cheaper. Well, made them more convenient, and pound for pound they're more expensive. But being as you only tend to use little amounts of them, it actually tends to work out cheaper than if you bought it from, than if you bought all the necessary components, mixed them. Which again, people don't think that their time is worth money, but if you're spending 2 hours mixing something, that could be 2 hours you're doing something else you like, or it could be 2 hours working, making money. You never know. But it is a good thing that they've done this. It's actually one of the things I think they've really picked up a great idea on. Right, we're gonna dive into the magazine now. As always, we've got the signature from Ian, our spiritual liege. First, we've got the Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights are fantastic. They are huge. Give you an idea, an Imperial, if this is a basic Space Marine Imperial Knight, will usually stand about that high compared to it. They're not Titan big, but they are mini Titans. They're basically GW. The Knights have existed in the lore for a long time. They used to be from something called Maiden Worlds. The whole thing about Maiden Worlds they were massively overgrown worlds where you couldn't really walk around unprotected, because the reason they were called Maiden Worlds is because they were completely untouched. And they are occupied by human and Eldar. In some cases, both. And in order to be able to maneuver around, they needed these massive walkers that weren't Titans but were a middle ground. And then these walkers that were there to basically chop down massive trees, walk over obstacles that couldn't be surpassed easily by a human, then got adapted for war. Recently, they then got forgotten about for a few generations because they were only ever part of they were part of the lore of 40k, but they only ever made models for them for Adeptus Titanicus or Epic. And even then, I'm not sure if there were ever rules for the knights. I know there was a load of background, a load of cool stuff. I used to have a couple of little, they were like yay big, tiny little epic models. But they got forgotten about. Then, I'm trying to think exactly how many years ago. Quite a few years ago, GW brought out their first Titans, and I was like, yeah, Titans, we're all going to get Titans. And then everybody looked at the price and went, Titans, none of us can afford Titans. So GW, being relatively business savvy, spotted a gap in the market for a cheap cut price Titan. So they basically scaled it down and made it out of plastic instead of resin, and they gave us Knights. This iteration of Knights comes from Forge Worlds. Not Forge World the thing, but Adeptus Mechanicus Forge Worlds. They're maintained by a wing of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but they're very much their own thing with sort of heraldry and stuff like that. And they fight along they fight alongside other forces, not just Adeptus Mechanicus, Skitarii and stuff like that. But yeah, they're really cool. They're like mini Titans, and they give you the feel of having a Titanic war machine without actually having to spend. I think the cheapest Titan is something like £400 altogether. I think you can get like the body for £200 and something, then it's £80 odd for the arms and £50 for the head. And those are the prices it was last time I looked. I haven't looked in a while because it's not something I'm ever going to be able to afford. I think that's for a Warhound. And the Warhounds sort of stand about, I can't show you on the camera, but they're about yay big. They're massive. The Reaver Titans being bigger than those. The Warlord Titans being huge. And they do have, they have built an Imperator Titan. I'm not sure if it's ever became available on Forge. I think it might have done, but the Imperator Titans are the size of a small person and ridiculously expensive. It's unlikely you'll ever see one beyond an Apocalypse game, and even then, it's just if you've got that friend that has more money than sense, and they're, even when they're a quite sensible guy, they still have to have more money than they have sense in order to buy a Titan. It's just so bloody expensive. If you've got a Titan out there, kudos to you. I'm glad you've got a job that allows you to afford it, and I'm glad you're doing well in life. But for everybody else, so that you don't miss out on the fun, there's Knights. As you can see, they are very reminiscent of the old Titans, particularly the Reaver Titans. There are several different classes of Knight. The basic Knight comes at about £100. You've got smaller Knights, you get a pair of two of them for about £50. And actually, I think the basic Knight comes at about £90. And then I think it's about £120 to £130-ish for some of the larger variants. And then you go on to Forge World, where they're even more expensive, and you've got a bunch of variants. You've got a bunch of variants of various prices, and they're all really cool as well. But they're within what you consider the sort of affordable Forge World prices, like 150 or £200. Yeah, they're the kind of thing that you can save 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases, and maybe you could actually look at getting if you really, really wanted to, but you don't need to. That is one of the things I do like about GW. You have a lot of this amazing stuff that's available from Forge World, but it is literally set up as a separate entity. So if you want this stuff, you're paying an arm and a leg, but then you can buy usually something that's a more standardized equivalent from GW. There are Knights in Forge World, there are Titans and Super Heavies in Forge World. GW does a plastic Baneblade kit. GW has a plastic Knight kit. They're all expensive, but they're not beyond reason. I have two of the smaller Harbinger Knights. I have two of the smaller Knights, which are about the same size as the Primaris Titans. And frankly, that's pretty cool. And Knights are cool, but they're not battle winners. They're really, really good and do a lot of damage, but they, you don't have to have them as well, which is another, I think, a good savvy step by GW. They've made them amazing, but at the same time, they haven't made them unbeatable. Go through the script here. I'm just rambling, sorry. Imperial Knights are the legacy of the distant past. Each of these vast war machines is a survivor of the age of strife, a relic passed down to new generations. Long ago, they protected mankind. Towering engines of war, Imperial Knights bristle with deadly weaponry and dominate the battlefield. Each Imperial Knight is covered with the heraldry of its single noble pilot, who guides the actions of his steed with expert precision. The pilot is wired into the throne mechanicum, the control center of his vehicle. From his seat, the pilot sees the battle unfold via their steeds' auspex displays and data readouts, controlling the knight's lumbering body and its deadly array of weapons. So again, they're kind of wired in like Titan precepts, but not quite as intensely, and they have the same feel. It's worth noting that in the previous iteration, and I'm pretty sure still in this iteration from what I've read, Knights have machine spirits, and spending so much time wired into that machine spirit can affect how Knight pilots and even Titan pilots think, to the point of the way they used to have it is particularly experienced and old Knight pilots sometimes forget they're not 60 foot tall or 50 foot tall, and try and stomp things or try and do things that they can do with their Knight, and then find that they don't have a chainsword for a hand. Yeah, weird things like that. It's like, I'm going to shoot you with, no, that's a hand, it's not a melter. And from what I understand, a lot of machine spirits can bond with pilots. That's even something that happens with Space Marine Centurions, because the machine spirits are so aggressive, they can affect the way that the Centurions thing. Avenger Gatling cannons whir as they spit death to enemy troops, whilst volcano lancers sear straight through enemy vehicles. The only way to bring down Imperial Knight is to target it with overwhelming firepower, yet even the most destructive weapons may still be turned aside by the Knight's ion shields, solid shields, and laser blasts splash harmlessly against them. So the Knights are fairly well protected. They don't have void shields, they have ion shields, but it's a similar thing. Here we can see a slightly different picture of a Knight, this one looking a little more upright and human, although that's partially because of the angle. It then moves on to describe how Knights sometimes work individually, or you can get Lancers of Knights, working in formation. You can get some of them acting as gun platforms, others rush forward to attack things at close range. And it goes on about how they work alongside infantry, but they're basically their own massive destructive kill things. Those Knight pilots, we've got some pictures of some Knight pilots there. You can see almost all of them have cybernetic implants and Auspex plugs for them. To control an Imperial Knight, the noble must first bond with the machine's throne mechanicum. Many are driven mad or killed by this process, but those that pass the test are sworn to protect the realms of mankind from the galaxy's many dangers. So you can imagine even those that pass are not the same as they were before. We've got some quotes from the Knights. I have fought across scores of the world in the Emperor's name. I have slaughtered traitors, innocent heretics for the honour of my house. I have known glorious victory and painful defeat, yet I shall never tire, never cease, and never relent, for ours is a duty that will never end. And that's by Lady Karina Griffith. Then we've got, there are none so detestable in all the length and breadth of the Imperium as those who have made slaves of its loyal servants. And he goes on for a while, and that's Sir Hector, spelled badly, Chainbreaker. And then we've got Sir Tadwin of House Boros, who says, the Errant is surely the finest of knights, a cannon of unsurpassed power. And he's wearing a full face mask. So there's all cool stuff there. You can see the original knights that first came out look like this. Then we had the guys with the rocket launcher. I think these are the Night Wardens. And the guys with the rocket launchers on the top, which looked even more like the original Reaver Titans. And now also available from GW, you've got these guys, which are your super heavy knights. As you can see, cannon, rocket launchers, cannon, big plasma gun, and then 2 machine cannons in the front. I don't know if you can see it. The original has 1 machine cannon, as does the Warden, and they all adapt. And here at the front, you've got the smaller guys, which are the Armigers, I think it's called, which are the ones I've got. You can see that you've got your equivalent of your Warhounds, your Reavers, and your Imperials, your Imperial Titans, all in knight form. So it gives you a lot of scope to play with and a lot of fun to play with, whilst still being within potentially affordable prices, depending on how wealthy you are. The chance of me getting a full-scale, full-price knight are between slim and none. Can't really justify that expansion. Expenditure. Can't really justify that expenditure. There you go. But they're still fantastic things. And here we've got a much more detailed picture of the knight with a weapon and a power fist. There are Chaos Knights as well, and have been since the Heresy. From what I understand, there are fewer because they don't have as much access to repair, but that's made up for from the fact that Chaos have demon engines, which are as big as Knights as well. Right, next we move on to Space Marine Codex Heraldry. This is a basic example of what a lot of the symbols on the Space Marine shoulder pads mean. It's worth noting these examples are, gosh darn it, are Ultramarines and other, there's 2 pages there. Yeah, other chapters have their own different examples. And that little round blob there is the knee pad. We can see Battle Brother just has the gold heraldry around the outside. Depicts what company he belongs to, so they can belong to different companies, in which case I think gold is first company. The arrow indicates a Battle Brother 3, usually, again, that's usually their company number. Not their company, that's usually their heralding number. What's the 3 for? Anyway, squad number, thank you. You've got white there, which is a different company number. Yeah, the veterans have the cross. You've got lieutenant there. You know, he has the iron halo on the skull, which indicates he's a veteran lieutenant. You've got sergeants are red. Veteran sergeants are red with a white stripe. Veteran is a white stripe, and then you've got lieutenant who has red and white because he's obviously going to be a veteran as well. You've got a captain. Captain's helmet goes back to blue, but he has a lot more heraldry on his shields and things like that. Often, also, you know, he'll have his own personal heraldry on the right shoulder pad as well as the heraldry on the left shoulder pad. You've got here it shows you the company colours. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. These are Imperial Fists, so again they're mostly in line with the Ultramarines. But yeah, sorry. 1st is silver, 2nd is gold, 3rd is red, 4th is green, 5th is black, 6th is orange, 7th is purple, 8th is grey, 9th is blue, and 10th doesn't have a colour because it's a scout thing. It's worth noting, with the codex breakdowns, you will sometimes have the different colours, as some companies will just have tactical marines, and other companies will just have assault marines or heavy weapons marines. and some companies will mix. So you might have the second company as your tactical, and the 8th company as your heavy support, depending on how your guys are set up, and how you've chosen to follow the codex, if at all. Fortunately, being a Space War player, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Our heraldry is completely different. Also, it goes through battlefield roles. Battle line tend to either be the two-way arrow or the upward arrow. Veterans, as you can see, have this cross. It's called a Maltese cross in real life, and a veteran cross in 40k. The sideways cross with the arrows is for close support. Used to be assault, but now we've got Primaris and Standard Marines. It covers other guys as well. The upward arrow, or the chevron, or the alpha, depending on what you want to call it, symbol of the Spartans, whatever, and the explosion are what you call fire support, which can vary between special weapons teams like melter teams and plasma teams to rocket launchers, las cannons, and the like. And then you have command, which is a big sheet, a big strike straight down, with a skull or a skull in a circle. That's in Crimson Fist command colours. But they tend to have the same meanings. Again, that doesn't go for all chapters. Space was just one example that follows a completely different system. So, before you go painting all your guys in accordance with this, check whether it's appropriate for the chapter or successor chapter you're running, as some of them work differently and use different combinations of men. Others completely ignore the codex, and others are what's called codex adherent chapters. The majority of chapters are what's called codex adherent, which means they follow the codex to some degree. But just because you're codex adherent, again, doesn't mean you're exactly the same, and doesn't mean you don't necessarily alter it for various reasons. For example, if you've painted your guys in purple, you might find that you don't like the way that just having the same colour purple trimming on your shoulder pads looks. You might want a contrast, so you might throw another colour in there, and that's perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine. No one's ever going to complain. We can see, I think it's supposed to be silver there, but we can see we've got what looks like white scar colours and a silver background, but because it's printed, it basically looks like white and a different kind of white. And we can see that doesn't really show up that well. We can see we've got Blood Angels and red, and again, it doesn't really show up that well. That being said, it's up to you whether or not you like it. You can deliberately choose to match the colours of your guys and say, oh, this is the 9th squadron, their trim just happens to be the same colour as the rest of the things, because you want one solid guy. So yeah, it's there, so you've got something to look at and something to inspire you. But unless you're specifically doing Ultramarine Second Company the way they're done in the book, then you don't have to follow it. You can even, even if you're doing Ultramarine Second Company, you can say, oh yeah, this is an alternate Second Company from like 600 years ago that got lost in the warp, and their colours were different then, or 1,000 years ago, or anything you like, really. Nothing they tell you in these books is hard and fast, except the rules themselves, and even then, that's between you and your mate. Next is running Space Marine Infiltrators. Primaris Infiltrators are the equivalent of Space Marine Scouts, and it's reputed that they and Scouts get along quite well. Or rather, they're another equivalent. You've obviously got the other guys with the skull masks and that. Clad in Mark 10 Phobos armor, light and fast moving, they attack lines of communication. An infiltrator often begins with a barrage of smoke grenades. Where are we? Which Master Space Marines advance. These are another version of sort of like Scouts and stuff like that. These guys, unlike the previous versions, whose name now I'm blanking on, I'm literally going to pause and look at that now because it's pissing me off now. And I'm back, sorry for that short pause. Space Marine Reavers, can't believe I couldn't remember that. Yeah, Infiltrators differ from the Reavers in that the Infiltrators are actually much closer to the Scout remit. Whereas the Reavers are kind of like terror units. They move in, they come out and know like scouts, but they hit with, they kind of hit, overwhelm, kill, and then disappear, and they're meant to be almost a terror weapon. The Infiltrators are actually closer to Space Marine Scouts. These guys came out later, and they are, they're more designed to fulfill the role that Scouts fulfill, although not exactly. And there is some overlap. An Infiltrator attack, it says, it often begins with a barrage of smoke, which masks the advance of the Space Marines. As their enemies struggle to see through the haze, the Space Marines bring auger scopes of their marksman's bolt carbines to bear. So again, there straight away you're different, as the Reavers tend to use their pistols, and whilst the Reavers will use smoke grenades and that, they scream loudly using sonic attack weapons to let the enemy know exactly what's going on, whereas these guys are trying to avoid being seen. Aside from the weapons, the most important piece of equipment carried by an Infiltrator is his Omni Scrambler, a portable back-mounted device, intercepts signals, scrambles frequencies, and disrupts the enemy communication. So again, much more in line with the old Space Marine Scouts. But again, there is some overlap. Infiltrators are trained to survive for long months with little support. Some squads even have their own Medicae specialists, so that the gene seed of the fallen can be harvested even far behind enemy lines. So light infantry, vanguard, which means go ahead, battlefield or battle line. So they're another battle line group. Specialisms. Sometimes, sometimes they change the words and it annoys me. Specializations, it should say, but specialisms. Stealth tactics, anti-infantry combat, sabotage, infiltration, reconnaissance, and assassination. So we can see there that when you line it up with the old Reavers, whose specializations include some of that, but include terror, psychological warfare, and that, there is a difference. You'll also see they have more standardized looking face plates as opposed to the Reavers with the skulls, and they're pretty cool as well. It's also noting they have access to a few specialists that the Reavers don't, including, for example, a librarian there. Sorry, twitch. And you've got Helix Adepts, are Space Marines who receive additional training from the Apothecaries and stand ready to ascend to the rank of Apothecary when a new one is needed. Meanwhile, they practice their craft in vanguard formations using their medical skills to tend to their allies. So where an Apothecary is effectively a fully trained doctor because he can perform a lot of operations, the Helix Adepts are much more like a medic. They're not there to perform complex repairs and that. They literally patch up, take gene seed and move on. I can't see. Oh no, there he is. You can see him there with his little mechanical device, ready to harvest gene seeds and that, which is cool. Then we've got the Incursors, who are again another kind of thing, running very similar. Whereas the Infiltrators specialisms, are stealth tactics, anti-infantry combat, sabotage, infiltration, reconnaissance, and assassination. The Incursor specializes are stealth tactics, anti-infantry combat, sabotage, infiltration, reconnaissance, and mine laying. So they're much more nasty traps for the enemies and your hit and run stuff. Well, they're both hit and run stuff. They're much more nasty traps for the enemies and ambush as opposed to random hit and run. But I'll read the basics here. Incursor squads are aggressive, close quarter gunfighters. So you've got some assault specializations there. Their missions are usually see them storming defensive positions or outflanking their enemies to knock out key assets deep in the line. So they're much more like a special forces assault squad rather than army rangers, if you will, using the US equivalents. Incursors have a range of powerful wargear to help them complete their missions. The most important pieces of equipment they use are their Oculus bolt carbines and Divinator class Auspexes that feed their advanced combat visors with this equipment. They feed their advanced combat visors. With this equipment, they can gather every scrap of relevant data in their surroundings. This wargear allows incursors to see through walls, thick smoke, absolute darkness. Their Auspex also detect the telltale signs of incoming enemy, whether or not they arrive by airdrop, teleportation, or other means. Incoming reinforcements often find themselves under fire. So these guys are much more sort of like assault and heavy combat based. How weird. If you look at the picture there, I don't know whether it's been reversed, but the heavier shoulder pad is on the other side. It's on this side, as opposed to, if I flip this over, on that side, which is in the Reavers and the infiltrators. Yes, there's infiltrators, intercessors, incursors. They're using a lot of in names. Here we've got a few more pictures. I believe these actually come from the same box set. You've got Brother Gorael, Brother Torian, and Brother Lacidon. All Blood Angels on these guys. Yeah. We've got Blood Angel Incursors stalk across a smoked clog battlefield. Are Blood Angels? I don't know if they're actually available. I've seen them, but I haven't actually seen whether or not they're available to everybody else. Maybe they're Blood Angel specialists. It doesn't say that there. It says Space Marine Incursors. But there's a lot of cool stuff there. And a lot of awesome stuff there. And they're not one I've actually got one of. I may get one at a later point, but I've actually been holding back getting the new units until I've at very least finished Conquest and painted the guys beforehand. Yeah, right. You've also got things like Haywire Mines, which are explosive enough at the enemies, and there's a picture of the Divinator class Auspex, which lets them see a lot more on the battlefield. So that's all cool. Next, we've got how to paint death card details. This is using Rakarth Flesh, which we've already got. Surprised we're not doing anything with the... Oh, here we go. It's telling you how to add some cool details and highlights to your guys there. So that's a nifty one. Next, we have Weathering Bronze, which, as I discussed, is similar to Weathering Copper. You do similar when Weathering Copper. You paint it in there. It's worth noting, one of the reasons it's so thin is so that when you paint it, it'll sink and run into the lines, because usually when you get oxidization is when water touches metal. So the oxidization tends to go where, not behave in the way water does, but, be left by stuff that is water, basically. As water drips down, it'll oxidize what's beneath it. So you get that kind of effect, which is pretty cool. And you can also use Nihilak Oxide to work with smoke effects, because of the way it runs into the things. It's almost like a wash, only it's opaque, where washes are transparent. So you can use it for a lot of cool and weird stuff. You run into the dips, you wait for it to dry out, and as with most washes, as I say, treat it more like a wash. Not quite, but more like a wash. Don't slather it. You're just going to put it where you want it. But like a wash, it's going to take a while to dry. So you paint the model, you move along, and leave it aside. Paint the next model, and so on and so forth. And then hopefully, by the time you come back to the first model, it's all dried, or you have to leave it for an hour or so till it's completely dry, and then you dry brush it. shouldn't take an hour, but it depends on the temperature. At the moment, it's really, I'm in the south of England where our winters are mostly damp and then more damp. So that actually makes the paints take a bit longer to dry at this point. Then we've got slime, pus and plasma. Here we're using the Nurgle's Rot. So here you can see they're using it to paint droplets. They're not making all the drops with it, but it gives a sludgy and slimy feel. Make sure the slime has a solid coat of ordinary camo over it before painting the Nurgle's Rot. Next, paint the Nurgle's Rot over the drips of slime. You'll have to search each model carefully, as these can be small. Nurgle's Rot is a thick paint that's fairly easy to control as you paint it across the model, but this does make it hard to paint over errors. Use it sparingly to start with. You can always go back and apply a second coat. That is true. Again, with the technicals, and while I'm going into it, they are a bit weirder to use because they're designed for specific effects rather than to be a standard paint. So where it's thick, I would recommend having a cotton bud or a sponge or a bit of tissue, possibly. Actually, I'll get you a bit of tissue and show you what I mean. A bit of tissue, possibly twisted to a point, and you get a bit of tissue like this, and you just. So I just getting a bit of twist it to a point like that, because where it is a thick paint, if you get it wrong, you can add another layer, and it'll usually look cool. But if you accidentally obscure a detail that you don't want to, you're going to want to get the paint off quickly before any of it dries. And recover that detail just in case. It is slime, it does drip, it tends to look cool, and if it covers a detail, there's thousands of details on GW models, so it's not actually usually a problem. But if it's something you want to, but if you accidentally paint over something you didn't want to paint over, where it's thick, it can obscure detail, and if necessary, you might just want to wipe it off with that. Get a bit of water on it and just flood the area just to wash it out. And then you can just let it dry and start again from scratch. Be careful with that. You don't want to damage any of the pre-existing paint, particularly if you only just put that on. But in all fairness, usually you'd add things like Nurgle's Rot and other things like that at the last stage, well after you paint everything else. It is worth noting, you might, if you spray your models with matte varnishes, it might affect the end texture. If you want it to be slimy, you can go back over it with a gloss varnish. If you want it to just remain, because it's not like the other ones where it remains completely shiny. It's actually kind of almost a satin finish when I get it to dry. But you can get gloss varnishes. You can even get satin varnishes from other companies like Army Painter and that. So if you've gone over the whole thing with a spray can of matte varnish and you want to have a slightly shinier finish, it's easy to put that back on, so don't worry about ruining it that way. I'll just turn back to the page where we want. Next, we've got plasma effects. That's much more standard detail effect. So that's a nifty cool trick there on the sleeve. And then we're looking at completed Death Guard. At this point, it expects you to have completed some of your models. Whether you have or not is up to you. But we can see, if you've been following on, don't expect your models to be this quality. This is painted by guys that are good at painting and have been painting for years. But your models should look pretty nice. They should look nice, that you enjoy them and you're proud of them. Never compare your models to other people's models. I'm a really good painter by most people's standards. This is just a really basic guy I've done, and that was just done with base and a wash, so I'm trying to paint those quickly. I can do a lot better than that, and there are hundreds of painters out there that I look at and go, oh fuck, why do I even bother? Because there are so many amazing people out there, and no matter who you are, there is going to be somebody who makes you want to quit because they're so good. So, do this for your own fun. It's a hobby. It's not a job. You don't have to be the best in the world. You just have to enjoy what you're doing. And if your painting is good enough that the other guy can tell what you meant, that's all you need. Anything beyond that is just for your own pleasure. Next, we've got some new Space Marine stratagems, which are cool. These can be used with your command points in battles that you've previously played. You can go back and try them with these command points, with these stratagems, and battles you play in the future. You can use these stratagems. We've got examples such as orbital bombardment. This stratagem can be used once per battle in the shooting phase, and if you have an Adeptus Astartes Warlord that did not move during the movement phase, instead of shooting with your Warlord's weapon, select a visible point on the battlefield and roll d6 for every unit within 6 inches of that point. So that's a 12-inch circle. So yeah, you pick a point 6 inches out from it. It's about that. Everything within that 12-inch basically circle is a target. So be aware of what you're doing. It says pick a point. It doesn't say pick a unit. So you can pick a point in the middle of 3 units, and every unit, where are we? For every unit within d6 of that point, subtract 1 from the result of the unit being rolled for as a character. On a 4+, the unit being rolled for suffers d3 mortal wounds. So yeah, it doesn't say fully within, so partially within should be enough. And you can do d3 wounds to any number of units as long as they're within that 12 inches. So that's nasty. What else have we got? Tactical flexibility. Use this stratagem at the start of any of your movement phases. Select a friendly Adeptus Astartes unit with the combat squad ability that has 10 models. That unit is immediately split into 2 separate units, each containing 5 models. That's exactly what it says in the tin. You've got a 10-man unit. You can split up into 2 5-man units on the fly. You can obviously start with 2 5-man units. You're totally allowed to do that. But this allows you to have a stronger unit which is more capable of taking wounds, or divide it up if you need to in the middle of a battle. So that has advantages. Then we've got Auspex. This stratagem, use this stratagem immediately after your opponents set up a unit that is arriving on the battlefield as reinforcements within 12 of one of your Adeptus Astartes infantry units. You can immediately shoot that enemy unit as if it were the shooting phase. So you don't use it at the beginning of the game, but you can use it as an additional reactive shooting phase. You must subtract 1 from all the resulting hits. It doesn't anywhere say instead of the shooting phase, so that's an extra round of shots. If they're dropping assault guys in, you can shoot them straight away. And if then they assault you, you get your incoming fire as well. If they're dropping a bunch of guys in that aren't going to assault you, you can shoot them. Then they go through their shooting phase, and then in your shooting phase, you get to shoot them again. So you get those options there. It's got some examples here of how the stratagems work, just so they're nice and clear. We've got some Death Guard. Kinky winky. We've got some Death Guard stratagems, which are on the next page, which are cool. I'm going to go back to that page in a minute because it's really cool. I don't want to do it then the stratagems. Nurgle's Rot. The stratagem can be used once per battle in a shooting phase. Select a friendly Death Guard character and roll 6 for every unit within 7 inches. So that's you have to pick a character, so it's more limited. But you have, instead of like the 6-inch circle, you've got 7-inch, which means you've got a 14-inch circle. Basically a radius of 6 means a diameter of 12, a radius of 7 means a diameter of 14. So anybody in a massive great 14-inch circle can be got. So that's quite a big circle. Just in case running, radius comes out from the center, diameter goes all the way across the center, and circumference goes around the outside. There you go, some basic school math there for you. It's easy to think of them as small circles until you realise just how round they are. So the total area of it is that of a circle that's 14 inches in diameter. So it's 7 inches either side of that champion. If you want to calculate that, pi r squared. But everyone within that 7-inch range, you roll a d6 on a 4+. The unit being rolled suffers d3 mortal wounds. Nurgle models cannot suffer wounds from Nurgle's rot. In fact, they find it rather refreshing. So if you're going up against Death Guard, that stratagem is useless. Veterans of the Long War, which is a fantastic ability they used to have. You can use this stratagem when a Death Guard infantry unit is selected to attack in a shooting or fight phase. You can add 1 to all rune walls made for the unit at the end phase. It used to be required that Veterans of the Long War was used against Imperials. Now it's just it's used by Chaos, so that's pretty cool. There's loads of weird, then there's a couple of others there. Grandfather's Blessing and Blight Bombardment. And again, there's instructions just to make it clear exactly what's happening there. Now I'm going to go back a page because this is pretty awesome and we haven't seen it yet, so it's something actually new. They've given you a Chaos Boon table. You may remember when we got the Chaos Spawn last week, I mentioned they're worth having for any Chaos player in case you roll badly on the Chaos Boon table. Chaos Boons are things that happen during combat and you get rewarded by guys. Here we go. It doesn't explain. Yeah, well. The Chaos Boon is a 1 command point stratagem, so you have to spend 1 command point on it. It used to be that it was reactive. If you did certain things like kill the warlord, kill the character, you got a chance to roll it. Now it's a stratagem, but here we go. You can use this stratagem at the end of a fight phase in which one of your Death Guard characters, excluding a demon, so you can't use it on demons, slays an enemy, character, vehicle, or monster. So it still has that reactive element, but you also need a command point to enact it, which is good because it could get crazy with Chaos. Yes, there were negative possibilities with the old Chaos Boon tables, but either they didn't work or, they did work. Either you ended up with as much, you end up not rolling negatives, so you end up with loads of positive stuff, and all of a sudden you've got really good for free. You had to work for it, but if you were clever, you could. Or you end up balancing out, so you end up putting a lot of work in, and you get some guys good and some guys bad, and it would really not be an advantage. So, I think what they've done is by the looks of it, they've made it more advantageous, but they've given it a cost so that, yes, you can have these Chaos Boons, but you're going to spend command points so that the other players who aren't Chaos players, they're going to get stuff as well. So that's actually quite good. That's actually balancing. However, there is still a negative effect on it. So let's have a look at it. You roll 2d6 and look up the result below. Boons last for the remainder of the battle. The same boon cannot be received by a model more than once. Should this happen, choose a result the character has not yet received. You cannot choose Spawndom or Demonhood. So you roll. If you roll the same one twice, you get to pick, which is really nice. Chaos Spawn or Demon Princes created by this stratagem have the keyword Nurgle. This is a Nurgle specific boon table rather than a generic boon table. I believe every Chaos God gets its own boon table, and there is, I believe, a boon table with Chaos unaligned. So 2d6. If you roll a 2, that's if you roll double ones, Spawndom. Your character is slain. However, before removing the model as a casualty, you can add a Chaos Spawn to your army. If you do so, it doesn't say must, it says can. So if it will massively bone you over, you can just have the character die according to the way this reads. But if you do so, you must set up the spawn within 6 inches of the character before removing them. Basically, your character is either so blessed by the Chaos Gods that he's overwhelmed by those blessings and devolves to a spawn, or he's gone, bless me, and the Chaos Gods have gone, fuck you, and spawned him, and he turns into one of these two beautiful, beautiful creatures. Worth noting, Chaos Spawn aren't the most amazing unit, but they are quite nasty in battle. They can have their uses. Ocular Rotostalks. On a 3, you get Ocular Rotostalks, which are basically snail stalks, or rot stalks, sorry, not Rotostalks. At 6 inches to the range of all the characters' shooting weapons, because you can see better. Living Swarm on 4, at 3 inches of the character's move characteristic. And this is stuff that stays on the character for the whole battle. It doesn't go away. If you're using campaign things, campaign rules, depending on what the campaign rules are, you can end up keeping things for entire campaigns. You can build up characters like that. The rules that allow that usually allow for non-Chaos guys to get other things, or they just run exclusive Chaos campaigns. Be aware, if you do run campaigns like that, the more you win, the more cool stuff you get. The more cool stuff you get, the greater disadvantage the players that didn't win can be at. So you don't run it for too long. You have to balance it out. You have to avoid what I tend to think of as avalanching or snowballing, in that you get a small advantage, then the next campaign step you get another small advantage, and each of these advantages adds up into the point where a player that isn't very good will be at such a disadvantage against the good players that it's not worth his time playing. He's just turning up for an arse whooping. So if you run a campaign, if you use Cow Spoons in it, try and take that into account and try and make sure that every player has balance and things like that, so you don't screw over players. Bloated Might, add 1 to the character's strength. Rancid Pseudopods, add 1 to the character's attack characteristics. The Eye opens. Choose a boon of your choice. Again, you cannot choose Spawn or Demonhood. There's a bunch of them. I'm not going to ruin it through going through all of them for you. Some of the best ones, you've got Corpulent Immensity, which adds 1 to the character's toughness, which is worth noting. Nurgle usually has 5 toughness to begin with, because the mark of Nurgle adding 1 to the toughness. That takes you up to a 6 toughness character, and that is quite meaty. You've got a character that is substantially harder to hurt. But the 12, if you roll double 6, your character is slain. Before removing your character as a casualty, you can add a Demon Prince to your army. If you do so, set up the Demon Prince within 6 inches of the character before removing them. Now, you can read this 2 ways. You can read it that your character was sacrificed in order to summon a demon, or, and this is the way I believe you're meant to read it, and I think the fact that it says Demonhood rather than Demon Summoning, I'm pretty sure it's the way it's meant to be read. Your character has basically done so well in the eyes of Chaos that they've raised him up to the rank of a Demon Prince. He is now an immortal Chaos being with power beyond imagining, or at least the stats for Demon Prince, which, there is a difference between those two, quite a big difference, but it does mean you're getting a bigger and nastier unit on the battlefield, so there's a lot of cool stuff going on there as well. So you've got a Demon Prince going on there. That's not a greater demon, but it's not that far off, and it gives you a chance to, if you're looking at certain characters that you think you might want to upgrade and you think you have a good chance of it, you can really go to town on conversions and that. Obviously before the game, you don't stop mid-game to convert Demon Prince, and it'll give you a lot of really awesome stuff. So I'm just going to move on now. We've got a Wasteland Ambush. You've got another story setting up why the next battle is happening. You've got a train going through the wasteland, which is being ambushed by Death Guard, so that's pretty cool. Let's go to the actual mission briefing. So the Death Guard are ambushing a train. So they've literally got this kind of horseshoe-shaped setup zone, whereas the Space Marines have something in the shape of a train carriage. They've got 12 inches wide. It looks very thin there, but 12 inches wide is going to look a lot longer than that. They've got little squares on this. If we assume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, They've called it 12 inches wide and made it 8 squares wide. I really think 12 inches is going to be a bit thicker than that when you actually look at it. You roll off and, battlefield. Roll off and start with the winner. Take turns placing battle mats in the layout shown above. So what they mean is you set them up however you want in a long ways pattern. Set up the terrain in an agreed manner. Death Guard deployment zones should have lots of terrain features. The Space Marines must move their units off the battlefield edge labelled escape route. So basically your job is to get your guys, the escape routes there with blue arrows, your job is to get your guys through the Death Guard. Armies, both players must create a battle-forged army with a maximum power rating of 50. So you've got everything you want. If you're planning to use the Chaos Boons table, don't put the Chaos Spawn in your army. Have them kept to one side on the off chance that you will have a Chaos Boon. If you don't have a Greater Demon, you can look up the stats for it. I'm sure they'll be available somewhere. And you can set up a model with an appropriate base. And if you haven't got an appropriate base, cut out a bit of cardboard to the right size base and just use that for now until you get a Greater Demon. Obviously, they haven't given a Greater Demon in this. So you haven't, if you've been collecting this, you haven't got a Greater Demon model. A Demon Prince model rather. So get the stats for a Demon Prince. Get, if necessary, a bit of cardboard cut out to the right base size. And just play on what you think is reasonable. And if you're a douchebag of a player, don't use that as an excuse. Don't use anything I've just said there to be as an excuse to be a douchebag to your opponent. Go, oh, it's only this tall. Oh, it's this tall. Well, frankly, if you're a douchebag player, don't play. But yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had there. Deployment. Both deployment zones are shown on the map above. Players are up to decide, and the winner can decide who deploys first. Players then alternate deploying their units, beginning with the player chosen to deploy first. Death Guard player has the first turn. So Death Guard player always gets turn 1. Victory conditions. Space Marine units that move off the battlefield have escaped, even if only a single model moved off the battle map. At the end of the battle, Space Marine player adds up the power level of escaped units. If the total is 15 or more, the Space Marine player is victorious. Any other result is a victory for the Death Guard. The game lasts for 6 rounds, so slightly longer. You don't have to kill opponents to win for Space Marines, and you don't even have to kill them to win for the Death Guard. You just have to keep them on the board for 6 rounds or obliterate them so they don't get off the board. So this is going to be another one of those really cool, interesting games where, because the victory conditions are very different, you can have a lot of fun with it. Right, so some exciting stuff next week. It's got this guy. It says Count the 7, Death Guard Tallyman. I don't know what says Count the 7. 3 is Nurgle's magic number. But that will be issue 74, in which comes Death Guard Tallyman, Sergeant Cronus, and Space Marine. Sorry, in which we get the rules for, and Tallyman, Sergeant Cronus, and Space Marine Eliminators, which, to my knowledge, are the flying guys with the big guns. They don't have big backpacks. They just have sort of gravity wings on normal backpacks. I kind of think they missed the trick there. And then, dun, 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 as they did predict, issues. If you saw it last week where I was quite tired, I might have been the week before that was just on Christmas. I sort of said I didn't. They said I said that I didn't know when the Repulsor was coming because I thought it was coming earlier. I got my numbers mixed up. It was always supposed to be in issue 75. But we've got part 1 of issue 75. We went through the maths previously. You're paying about £31-32 for a £50 model, and you're paying it in £8 instalments or £7.99 instalments. So you're making a significant saving there for a unit that you often will need multiples of. It is a transport. It is one of the basic units in a Primaris army, but at the same time, it is £50, making it a little bit of a stretch for some players to be able to get a lot of. If you've got 3 or 4 units that need transporting, this might be your opportunity. Go to your local news agents and order 3 or 4 copies of that. I sadly won't be doing that because I'm also collecting Mortal Realms, and if I start spending 50 quid in a shop on a week, my wife might get sad because she might be able to do tattoos, and she likes tattoos. But part 1 of the Repulsor. This looks like it's going to be a 4-part build, a 3 or 4-part build. Sorry, was it 3 or 4? 7.99, 7.99, 7.90, yeah, 9. I know I got £31. Oh, because it was £8, so 8. Yeah, 4-part build, which means it'll take us 75, 76, 77, 78, which will leave us 79 and 80 as the 2 magazines after the Repulsor, which again, it's worth probably putting in a word of caution there. If you need multiple of them and you order, say you've got 4 units, so you order 4 magazines, first week he gets you 4 magazines, second week he gets your local newsagent gets you 4 magazines, third week he gets you 2 magazines, you've got 2 Repulsors. So, you know, discuss it with your newsagents, discuss the reliability of it, and, you know, see if they can get any guarantees off Hatchet, off Hatchet Partworks Limited, because we've had a lot of reports that getting hold of Hatchet for missing issues is a pain in the bum. Whether this is going to change when they finish doing this and move over to Mortal Realms entirely, or whether you're just not going to be able to get them because they're just not being manufactured anymore, we don't know. So whilst it's a great way of getting a lot of these really cool units at a cheaper price and at a more manageable price, there is always the risk that you're going to end up with 2/3 or 1/3 and a quarter and whatever of the tanks. Yeah. So, you know, take that into consideration when you do whatever you do with this. You know, it is going to be a great way to get hold of them. You could end up getting screwed over. So don't do it because I said you want to do it. I'm just saying it's a possibility. It's an option. But yeah, check with your local news agent. See what he says. Ask him to check for the weeks ahead to see if Partworks can give him any kind of guarantee, and then make your decision there. So that's pretty cool. I'm just going to quickly do the dice roll because, again, I forgot to see who gets these guys sent to them. So I'm going to pause, and then it'll be as though I was never gone. And through the magic of camera work, I am back as if I was never vanished. Did a quick dice roll. The winner is Christopher Gibson. If you're watching this, congratulations, dude. You've got quite a lot of cow stuff of this so far. Cool for you. As always, I don't have your address because I deleted it, because I always delete the addresses once I've used them on account of the fact I don't want to have them. You know, I have no desire to have your personal information, so the moment I've used it for what I need it for, it's gone. So email me your address again and I'll send it to them. I'll send it to you, and no, I can't remember it because I have a terrible memory. But congratulations, you've got 2 cows spawn. I'm going to do 2 things just before I finish. One, I'm going to apologise for the length of these. These videos seem to be getting a bit longer, but I think that's because a lot of the stuff they're including is newer and cooler stuff, so I'm kind of feeling the need, you know, to go on further and to fill in more information about it, particularly, you know, things like these. I'm just going to quickly show you what this looks like, if I can get it to focus on it. You can see there that it's not entirely, that it's opaque, but it's not entirely solid. You can see the wood through it. So that's kind of the finish you get for the nihilic oxide. And then if I do this, you can see, if I get it close, no, got hair stuck into it. You can see just about that it's got a lumpy finish. And it's kind of, so it's giving you this kind of gooey finish that has a bit of a shine. You can't really make out the shine on it. As I say, it has a bit of a shine on it. Almost glossy, not quite glossy. I kind of think of it as a satin finish. So this So as I say, it's worth considering that when painting it, what order you're going to paint it in. You might want to protect it by putting a varnish over it. If you do, you're going to have to get either the you're going to have to get a varnish to kind of finish it with, because like Blood for the Blood God, if you paint the whole thing with a matte varnish and then put the Blood for the Blood God on, you're going to have everything matte and a shiny Blood for the Blood God. If you paint everything, including the Blood for the Blood God, and then protect it all with a matte varnish, it takes the shine off and gives you a matte finish. So you redo that by getting a gloss varnish and painting over. With that, you redo that by getting probably a satin finish varnish. And I know, again, not advertising for Army Painter, but I know a lot of companies do it. In particular, I know Army Painter do it. It's almost a bit shinier than satin, so you can experiment by mixing by mixing a little bit of satin with a little bit of gloss, and then seeing how it dries and seeing if it gives you the kind of sickly stickiness that you want. But yeah, those are how those two look. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next week for issue 74. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.